In the last video, we talked about buyers. Buyers are interested in maximizing their level of happiness, maximizing their utility. In this video, we are going to talk about sellers. What are they interested in? We will also talk about environment, the environment in which buyers and sellers operate. So, let us talk about sellers first. The aim of seller is profit maximization. What do we mean by profit maximization? First, let us understand profit. The sellers are in business of selling stuff in the market. When they sell stuff, they earn some revenue. So, profit is denoted by pi. This is a Greek letter pi, and this is equal to total revenue minus total cost. Total revenue, what do we mean by total revenue? The total earning that firms have. Of course, here we are taking a very simple view. As we progress, we will realize, or in some examples we will see that the revenue gets affected by many things like taxes, subsidies. Right now we are ignoring. We are thinking of firm as something that takes different inputs and converts it into outputs, and selling of these outputs will give revenue. So, revenue will have two components, price per unit and the quantity sold. So, P multiplied by Q will give you total revenue, and of course, to produce something you need to manufacture it. If you are not manufacturing it, you are buying it from somewhere and selling it. So, you are incurring a cost to get these outputs that you are going to sell in the market. So, what is the cost? Cost would depend on quantity. Okay. So, this is total cost, and the difference of these two gives you the profit. And mind you, this is any profit. As you change Q, your profit will change, but you are interested in maximizing this profit. So, we can say that maximize PQ minus C of Q with respect to Q. As you change Q, your profit will change, and you are interested in getting the maximum of this pi, and this is denoted by small pi. Mind you, remember this, that a small pi indicates maximized profit, while capital pi indicates any profit. So, we can say now simply the aim of a firm is to obtain as much profit as possible, or in other word, aim is profit maximization. We have already seen that revenue has two components, price and quantity. Quantity is completely in control of the firm. How much to sell in the market, that would depend on the firm. Price we will see is much more complex. Sometimes this firm or seller can decide how much should be the price. Technically all the time seller can decide, but think about a situation when someone is selling identical product at 50 rupees, can you sell it at 60 rupees? You cannot, no one will buy from you. So, there is constraint on your pricing decision. We are going to learn about different business environment, different market environment that puts constraint on your pricing decision in the next slide. Let us get back to cost. What do we mean by cost? We already saw that cost here is indicated by a function of quantity. So, to produce something you need raw material, and raw material is costly, you need to buy. If you have a firm, if you are just a distributor, it means you are buying some product from somewhere and selling it in secondary market. In that case, your cost is going to be the amount that you pay to buy your supplies. So, raw material I am using it in broader sense. The next term is technology. What do we mean by technology? that, like for example, if you are converting fuel to energy, it depends how efficient of an engine you have. So, it depends on the technology, your cost also depends on technology. Here we have this Indian Institute of Technology, here meaning of technology is engineering. In economics we are talking about engineering, but slightly in a different way. For us, technology is a black box. What does this black box do? It takes inputs, and input can be input 1, input 2 and so on. These can be raw material, it can be your supply that you are buying from somewhere, input 2 can be transportation. So, it depends what kind of problem you have, and then you are getting some output. So, this black box which takes input, different inputs and convert them into some sort of output is called technology for us, and we can represent it mathematically. We can say that y is equal to f of x, where y is the output, x is input. We can, if we have more than one input, we can write it like this, f x1, x2, x3 and so on. Okay. So, this f is representing the technology. So, technology has an impact on cost. Okay. Now, we have some idea about seller's aim. Let us try to present it in a better way. Basically, the aim of a seller is to create wealth, to enrich himself to for whatever reason. How does this wealth get created? The wealth creation has a very simple formula. Wealth gets created when you move an asset from its a low value use to high value use. Like for example, a car these days costs, let us say 10 lakh rupees. Do you think that if you price all the component, the total would be 10 lakhs? I bet you that it is going to be much less than 10 lakhs. Then why does it cost 10 lakhs? Because separately they do not have that kind of value associated. Car as a together has much higher value. So, then different components are getting moved into high value uses. When workers are, same workers you can hire to work on a mundane job and a very intricate job. When you take higher level of work from them, then you are moving their work from low value use to high value use, and that is what all businesses, that is what all sellers do. Let me take an example of a seller. Seller we are using in a very broad way. So, this seller is the owners of Mervyn. Mervyn was a departmental store operating on west coasts in the USA. Mervyn has a thriving business. Owner of Mervyn decided to sell the chain of departmental stores to a private equity consortium. The private equity consortium came to the conclusion that the profit of Mervyn is coming from the rental income. So, what they did? They separated the departmental store business from the rental income. What do we mean by this? That departmental store were located on a particular land, and this land was also owned by the same company. So, this private equity company consortium, private equity consortium sold the rental part to another company, and that other company started charging the actual market rate to the departmental store. Immediately what was observed, that Mervyn, which was a thriving business, started making loss. My point is here that even this destructive thing is basically moving asset to a high value use. I want you to pause the video and think about it for a minute, and during discussion we will come back to this and I will talk about how this separating the rental business from departmental store business is moving asset to high value uses that created wealth. Let us come to a seller's willingness to supply. So, you want to sell something, selling something is costly to you. Sometimes it is costly in terms of getting the raw material, sometimes it is costly in terms of transportation cost, sometimes it is costly in terms of doing the hard work. So, you need to incentivize, you need to get something in lieu of selling that product in the market. And it so happens typically that as you want to sell more, your level of effort for to sell one unit more goes up. Let us, I am not saying of course, when you sell more total cost is going to be higher, I am not talking about that. I am talking about the additional cost that you incur to sell one more item. Like for example, you have a mango tree and you want to sell mangoes from this particular tree. Some of the mangoes are on the low lying branches, they are very easy to get. So, the incentive that you need is less, you can very easily pluck those mango, and so you do not need a very high incentive. But if you want to sell more, perhaps you have to climb mango, perhaps you have to get a big stick to get those mangoes from higher branches. So, you need higher incentive, okay, to sell one additional unit, and that is typically what, that is the reason that your willingness to supply goes up as prices in the market goes up. I am not saying always it is true, sometime to produce one unit, let us say to produce one unit you are you own a generator and you supply electricity in your locality, then whether you want to supply 1 unit of electricity or 10 units of electricity, your cost is going to be the same. In fact, as you supply more on per unit term, your cost may decrease, but there is going to be a point that it would start increasing. That is the important part that we will observe in future. So, I can say that supply that we have here for a seller or from several seller is an upward sloping curve. This is P and this is Q. What does it mean? That if price is below, let us say below this level, then no one is willing to supply any of these items, and as price goes up, sellers are willing to supply more and more units. So, two reasons. One, that like we had talked about on buyer side, something similar happens here. First, it is upward sloping because to supply more you need to be given higher incentive. Why do you need to be given higher incentive? Because it becomes costlier to supply one more unit. Second reason is that if price is higher, let us say your neighbor, who is doing something else may try to, you may hire him to get these mangoes and to sell it in the market. So, other people can shift their business, and one example I want to give you, there was a news article some time back when Uber was launched in Delhi. Many Delhi university students, they became driver and started driving car just because the compensation was so lucrative, price was so higher that not only drivers were willing to work extra hours, people from other professions also became driver, and that is the reason that we get supply curve as upward sloping curve. All these things will again be covered in much more detail. I am just trying to give you the basic flavor that we will see in this particular module. Next is environment. Environment is very, very important. Environment is what decide prices in the market. So, let us go back to the apartment owner. I had a slide that gives you price and quantity. We had a graph drawn last time and we had seen it is stepwise graph. I am not interested in the graph anymore, what I am interested in is revenue. In the last video we talked about that apartment owner would like to rent all 5 apartments. That is not a nice aim to have. The better aim is to earn as much as profit as possible. We can assume that as apartments are already made, so the apartment complex owner is not going to incur any extra cost. So, what the apartment owner is interested in is maximizing revenue. So, if price happens to be above 70, its total revenue is going to be 0. If it is between 65 and 70, so price is between 65 and 70, total revenue is going to be between 65 and 70. If price is between 60 and 65, total revenue, because you will have to multiply this P with 2. So, if it is it is going to be between 120 and 130. You see the total revenue is increasing as price is coming down. Here it is going to be between 165 to 180, still increasing, then it is going to be between 160 to 220, and then it is going to be 175 to 200. Now, if you follow this side or you can follow this side, we see some similar pattern, that here from 70 it is going up to 130, then 180, then 220, then 200. So, what we see here, that in the beginning your total revenue is increasing and later on it starts decreasing. It is not necessary that it would decrease further, it may increase sometime, it may decrease, because we are following a stepwise function. If we had a linear function like this, then we will see that it is first increasing and then decreasing. We can take as example that let us say that demand function is 30 minus P, and last time we had talked about that we have to include the choke price, that if P is greater than 30 then no quantity would be bought. So, Q is basically max of 30 minus P comma 0, and if we multiply it with respect to with P, so to get the total revenue P multiplied by Q. So, we are basically in range of price between 0 to 30, we are going to get P multiplied by 30 minus P if P is between 0 to 30, and then it becomes 0. So, if we draw the graph, it is going to look something like this, okay, because it is quadratic equation. You get here 30 P minus P square, you can draw it, here you have total revenue, here you have P. So, maximum you are going to get when P is equal to 15 in particular case. So, what we see, it is going up, then it is coming down. So, in this particular case, apartment owner is able to decide how much is going to be the price, and the example that we had seen with Q is equal to 30 minus P, apartment owner will decide that P is going to be 15 because it would maximize its revenue. The point here is that apartment complex owner is able to decide the price on its own. Think about a different scenario where you have only one buyer and he is interested in renting all the apartment, there are no other buyers. So, he would be able to negotiate a much better price from the apartment complex owner. So, monopsony is basically one buyer and many sellers, and monopoly is one seller and many buyers. Here monopolist has all the power in the market, here in monopsony the buyer has all the power. Oligopoly is an example where there are two apartment complex owner. Okay. So, each one of them have to think about what other is going to charge for their apartment. So, this we will study once we understand how do we solve games. And the last one is perhaps the theoretical one, where the competition is so intense, there are so many sellers, there are so many apartment complex owner, these buyers can go to anyone. What would happen? Each apartment complex owner will try to lower the price little bit to capture the market, to get all the buyer, and all apartment complex owner will have this incentive to lower the price. So, they will keep on lowering, and if it is really intense competition, which we call perfect competition in economics, the price will fall to the level of marginal cost. What is marginal cost? Cost to produce one more unit. So, each owner, each seller would think that by lowering the price we will be able to capture bigger market. So, they will keep on lowering, but once they hit the marginal cost they cannot go any lower further, because going lower means making loss, because one additional unit will cost you something and you are able to get lower than that from the market, that is not advisable. So, ultimately in this theoretical concept the prices will become equal to marginal cost. When we do simple pricing we will get into this perfect competition little bit, just to understand that what does it mean. Let us talk about pricing technique. Okay. We talked about the environment, these techniques are used in different ways in different environment. So, pricing is basically an outcome of a negotiation between a buyer and seller. There are basically two aspects of pricing. The first one is size of the pie. What do we mean by the size of the pie? Think about the buyer is interested in buying because buyer's reservation price is greater than the market price of that product. And why seller is willing to sell? Because seller's cost of that item, so that is additional cost for that item, so I can say marginal cost is less than the price. So, if transaction happens between a buyer and a seller, then for the society a value is created which is equal to reservation price minus marginal cost. This is the value that gets generated in the transaction. So, this is the one aspect. The second, why negotiation is taking place? How to divide this pie. Of course, buyer would want to get bigger, as big as possible. Seller would also like to get as big as possible of this pie, and that is why a negotiation is taking place between them. When you go to bazaar with sabji walas, when you purchase sabji, sabji wala says 20 rupees per kg, you say 15 rupees per kg I will pay. What does it mean? So, of course, seller sabji wala has a price, let us imagine that it is 5 rupees and you are willing to pay, in your mind at least, you would of course not tell it to sabji wala, you would have bought this sabji if the cost was up to 25 rupees, it means your reservation price is 25 rupees. So, this if you two come together and transaction takes place, then this surplus of 20 rupees is generated, that is total surplus. Now, the negotiation is taking place to divide these 20 rupees between the two. So, when seller proposes that pay me 20 rupees, what he is saying that you can take 25 minus 25 rupees of surplus, that is consumer surplus, and I should get 20 minus 5, that is 15 rupees of surplus. We can call it producer's surplus. When you say that no, I will pay only 15 rupees, what you mean to say, no, I do not want 5 rupees, I would go for 10 rupees and you keep 10 rupees. So, this is the way this negotiation works. Of course, you as a buyer do not have access to the information that how much is the cost for the seller, and the seller does not have information that how much is your reservation price, but this negotiation is taking place. The other situation is, sometime you go to the market and you say that someone has written fixed price, you cannot negotiate. There also I say a negotiation is taking place. Seller is using a particular strategy, we can call it take it or leave it strategy. Seller has already decided its surplus and then whatever is left is for you. Many times we see that an auction takes place to decide that who is going to get how much of surplus. What happens in the case of auction? The seller does not know that who is willing to pay the maximum price. So, seller conducts an auction to figure out who has the maximum valuation, who is willing to pay maximum and how much I can extract from that person. Because in auction, if someone says that I would pay up to 10,000 rupees, then you can negotiate in only other way by going up. You cannot say now I am going to pay only 9,000 rupees. You can say I will pay 11,000 rupees or 12,000 rupees and so on. So, it is a nice way for seller to extract most surplus from you. But again we will see, sometime it can be conducted, sometime it cannot be conducted. We will look at the condition when we discuss the auction. Similarly, another technique is price discrimination. When same product, different copies of same product are sold to different people at different prices, mind you sometime it is illegal. So, sellers do it in a very smart way. They will, like for a book, they will come up with a hardbound immediately and soft cover much later. So, you want to read that book immediately, you would like to purchase the hardcover and pay the higher price. If you are willing to wait, you are patient enough, you are willing to wait, your value is perhaps lower for the book, or perhaps you have less money, you would wait, purchase that book later on, then you are going to get soft cover. So, of course, seller can say that these two are different product, hardbound has better quality paper, is hardbound which is costly, but the take is that the cost involved in better quality of paper or hardbound cannot justify the difference between these two prices. Similarly, think of airline, if you purchase a ticket a month in advance you pay much less, and if you purchase just before the travel day then you have to pay much higher. This is another way airlines are doing price discrimination, because airlines know that leisure traveler would purchase tickets in advance and business travelers would purchase at the last moment. So, they try to extract as much of surplus from different consumers. So, this is another technique of pricing. We will get into details of all these techniques later on. Right now, I want to close this video with an example. So, let us take a look at this problem and I will give you a general way to think about, it does not matter whether it is a buyer or a seller, basically it is a decision maker. If you think about it, each buyer is a decision maker and each seller is a decision maker. So, if you have a decision maker who can do either x1, x2, x3, x4 or xn, okay, and doing this will get some money or some benefit. So, we can say the benefit is bxi, that is coming from xi, and doing xi also involves a cost. So, cxi. okay, and the difference is the gain to the decision maker. So, what decision maker will try to do? Decision maker will try to maximize, you know, how much of net benefit he or she can get. So, he will try to maximize with respect to I. If it is a buyer, it is about buying decision. If it is a seller, benefit is coming from total revenue and cost is coming from total cost. So, mathematically it does not matter much that whether we are talking about buyer or seller. And of course, there is one difference that you should keep in mind, I will emphasize it later on also, that buyer's happiness cannot be measured in monetary term all the time. Of course, it can be converted into monetary term, but happiness, my happiness is my happiness, it cannot be compared with your happiness. But a seller's profit can be compared with other sellers' profit. So, that is a difference. We will, this is a important difference and we will talk about it later, but as of now let us try to do this decision making problem. So, here is a story. Yesterday you were unexpectedly given a free ticket to Sony Nigam concert scheduled for the day after tomorrow. The market price for this ticket is 7,500, but the most you could sell it for it only 5,000 rupees. So, someone gave you a free ticket and if you want to sell it, if you do not want to use this ticket, you can sell it in the market, not black or anything, we are not getting into that, but maximum that you can get by selling is 5,000 rupees. Today you discover that Shreya Ghoshal will be giving a concert the same evening and ticket for the Shreya Ghoshal concert are still available at 7,500 rupees. Had you known before receiving your Sonu Nigam ticket yesterday that Shreya Ghoshal would be coming, you definitely would have bought a ticket to see her and not Sonu Nigam. The question is, you have to decide whether it is true or false that it follows from the story that you should attend Shreya Ghoshal concert and not Sonu Nigam's concert. So, let us look at it. How can we solve? So, I already told you about alternative x1 and x2. So, here options are Sonu Nigam and Shreya Ghoshal, these are the two options. Which option one should you choose? That maximizes, you can think of it as a buyer, that option which would maximize the surplus, that option should be chosen. So, what we can say that how much is the net surplus to the consumer, to the buyer, that benefit from Sonu Nigam minus cost of Sonu Nigam. And similarly, we can say from Shreya Ghoshal, benefit from Shreya Ghoshal, watching the concert of Shreya Ghoshal minus cost of Shreya Ghoshal. What is given? That if you did not had this free ticket that was given to you, you would have selected Shreya Ghoshal and not Sonu Nigam. So, what it means that this is larger than the first one. So, we can say that net benefit, this is benefit, this is cost. So, this is net benefit from Shreya Ghoshal is greater than the net benefit from watching Sonu Nigam. And cost in both cases are given. In both cases, because if you are not given the ticket, it does not matter how much you can sell it for. In both cases, if you had to buy ticket, you had to pay 7,500 rupees. So, what we get here is in both cases this is the expression and it is clearly that you are getting more net benefit from Shreya Ghoshal. So, you can cancel this 7,500 because it is on the both side and it is very clear to you that benefit from Shreya Ghoshal is more than benefit from Sonu Nigam. So, should you go for Shreya Ghoshal? No, it is not clear yet because now you have a free ticket. So, you can think in two different ways. If you want to watch Shreya Ghoshal, how much you have to spend from your pocket? You can sell Sonu Nigam's ticket in 5,000 rupees and purchase Shreya Ghoshal ticket in 7500 rupees, but your actual cost is only 2500 rupees. You cannot watch both, they both are performing at the same time. So, now we have this benefit from Shreya Ghoshal is B of SG minus cost is 7500. How much is cost for watching Sonu Nigam ticket? Now, because you have free ticket, so cost is 0. So, here your net gain is 0, and we have to compare. You should go for the one that gives you higher net benefit or higher net surplus, but we cannot decide. We know that BSG is greater than BSN, but we do not know whether the difference is worth 2500 rupees or not. So, if I go back to the question, we can say that it is not clear whether you would attend Shreya Ghoshal's concert or Sonu Nigam's concert. You would attend Shreya Ghoshal's concert if your perceived benefit is for more than 2500 rupees. What do I mean by perceived benefit? This, we economists have habit of converting everything in monetary terms. So, let me give you a story that will help you, and then we can come back to this, that you are traveling in a train, somehow you lost your ticket, the TT comes and asks you for your ticket, you are not able to produce it. So, TT says that either you pay 5000 rupees fine or you will have to go to the jail for a month. Now, of course, you can decide one way or the other, but now I want you to do a thought experiment. Let us assume that you are willing to pay 5000 rupees rather than going to jail for a month. Let us say instead of it was 5000, it is 6000, 7000, 8000, 50,000, a lakh, 5 lakhs. Perhaps you will reach a limit where you would think that going to jail is perhaps a better option for you. Where at the point where that happens, that point will give you the value that you have, negative value that you have from going to jail. So, everything gets converted into monetary term. That is the habit we economists have. It is not always right or ethical, we will not get into it, but this is workable most of the time. So, this is what I mean when I say that if your perceived benefit is for more than 2500 rupees, the perceived benefit from watching Shreya Ghoshal concert is more than 2500 rupees, then watching Sonu Nigam's concert, then you would go to Shreya Ghoshal's concert. Otherwise, you would stick to Sonu Nigam's concert. Next week, we will start simple pricing. Thank you.